Hello, Alan here. Welcome to Discovering Buddhism. Our second, our second class on karma, and we've got two more to go. So I hope you're well. Good to see there's a few people there. Anyone new? I've just put my email on the side there in the chat section to give you the option of receiving the notes if you'd like to join the group and be on the email list. And I'll send you the notes. Every week we have notes that cover what we do in each class. And there's also readings that are available on each topic, quite extensive readings. So that's all there if you need it. So because we don't have live classes, new people, so it's probably quite hard for new people to join unless they contact Vajrayana Institute and somehow can get my email address. And so I put it there. So we have started some live classes at VI, some meditation classes, one of Geshe Samton's classes at the weekend. So it's gradual. I don't think we'll get to have live Discovering Buddhism classes this year from what I hear. So it'll probably be next year, unfortunately, but we'll just see how things go. But in the meantime, we've got at least this method of continuing the teachings. Hopefully, we'll get back to live classes as soon as we can, depending on the virus. So let's start, as always, with our 5 minutes of breathing meditation to settle the mind and get in the right frame of mind to receive some teachings and do some study. Okay, get comfortable. Now, we just come into our inner world, our body and mind, checking what's happening inside. Time to let go of the busy external world that we've just experienced, the daily activities. In a moment, just feeling a sense of gratitude that we can actually get together, do some study of the amazing teachings, Buddhist teachings, do some practice. Our motivation is the Mahayana motivation, which is not just to benefit ourselves, not just to intellectually study the teachings, put them into practice so that we can actively change our way of thinking, our minds, for the better, and progress along the path to having perfect, clear minds, Buddha minds, becoming a Buddha so that we can actually benefit all other sentient beings. So then we just now check our body, make sure our posture is comfortable, relaxing the shoulders, the neck and the head, evenly balanced on the floor or the chair. And bringing our awareness to the way the breath enters and leaves the body, the movement of the breath in the body. Just using the out breath at the beginning to breathe out any tension in the body, and any busyness in the mind. Imagine that with each out breath we're just relaxing more deeply, letting go. And then giving full attention to the breath, the movement of the body with the breath. The breath is always there, and now we're actually noticing it without interfering, without adjusting, judging. Giving the mind a break from all the busy thoughts, conceptualizations, and giving it this simple task of just watching the breath. Just checking from time to time whether we're on the breath or have been distracted. If the mind wanders, as it will, just let go of the distraction, come back to the breath. Great patience, again and again. so just relax. So I just thought we'd just have a quick look at the last class. Not last week, because we had public holiday last week. Week before that, just to refresh what we covered, which was the first class on karma. So basically, we just looked at karma as cause and effect, which is karma can be a little bit daunting as you go into the details, but actually the principle is very simple. That everything we do, think, and say has an effect on later on. Everything that we in our life that we do, think, or say will have consequences either in the short term or the long term, mostly the long term. So quite an interesting analogy by Robert Thurman is that he says karma is the spiritual DNA of human beings. Spiritual DNA, interesting idea. So the DNA, of course, being the physical blueprints we get from our parents, which decides what our eye color is, hair color, and so on. Any genetic diseases we inherit, and so on. So this idea of using that analogy to apply to our non-physical world, our mental world, our subtle mind, our mind in this life and in future lives is very interesting, because DNA is passed on to the next generation as well if we have children. And then the idea of spiritual DNA in Buddhist teachings is that our imprints that we are left on our mind from all our actions of body, speech, and mind, like seeds, karmic imprints they call them, will have an effect on the subtle mind that goes from this life to the next life. So yes, this idea of cause and effect, of course, we can see it in physics, gravity, laws of gravity, laws of chemistry, and so on. Different types of causation in the physical world, and just as in the physics world of physics and physical world, the laws apply whether we believe in them or not, whether we know about them or not. Gravity works whether we've been educated to understand it or not. And similarly, karma works whether or not we believe it or understand it. Still, it's going to be there. So, so this is the second point we covered last week, the difference between the Buddhist approach and in our Western material world, what causes us to have difficult times and problems, what causes us to have success, why do we win the lottery, why do we get cancer, why do we get coronavirus. So in the Western way of thinking, this is all external causes. They only look at what happened externally. We caught the germ, we got the genes from our parents to get that disease. Perhaps we didn't get a good education, so we didn't run our business successfully enough, so that's why we lost money. So everything is looking for external causes, and in some ways just allows us to blame anything but ourselves. And as Lama Zopa says, there's something missing. The thing that is missing is the sense of we are our own internal causes, that we are responsible, according to the Buddhist teachings on karma, for everything that happens to us. We're responsible for why we've got this human body, which is a very rare thing to have, and of course, we're responsible for creating the causes of what's going to happen in the future. So everything comes down to the present moment, how we're thinking at the present moment, what we're doing at the present moment, what we're saying. So it makes everything very immediate, important to live in the moment and to watch the our activities. This is why Lama Zopa says when you should watch your activities, walk with compassion, work with compassion, sleep with compassion, eat with compassion. So what he's doing is telling us that a positive state of mind, such as a compassionate mind, will set the entrain positive effects. So watch our mind, and as much as possible have a positive state of mind, and as much as possible avoid a negative state of mind. So evidence karma exists. We had a quick look at that. Basically, we have to, because we're not clairvoyant, we're not very realized, we're not Buddhas or very highly attained spiritual teachers who can actually see karma, how karma works, because karma is a kind of a hidden phenomena, it's called, unlike the senses, what we see, hear, taste, and so on. So we have to rely on a combination of reasoning, and scriptural authority. The Buddha has actually taught karma exists, and it's been followed for the last 2,500 years. So we can combine our own reasoning with scriptural authority, what the authenticity of the teachers, we check that out, the authenticity of the lineage, and even though we can't see things like microwaves and radio waves, there's enough evidence there for us to believe that, based on good reasons, that they exist. Similarly with karma. So we also looked at the 4 characteristics of karma. These are like the laws of karma, a bit like the laws of physics. Karma is definite. Positive cause will create a positive result. A negative cause will create a negative result. It's like planting. If you plant the tomato seed, you get the tomato. You won't get the pineapple. It's impossible. Similarly, if you plant the particular karmic seeds, you'll get a particular karmic result. Second one is karma expands. This is another thing that probably a bit different to the laws of physics, which say that every action and reaction is equal and opposite. Karma expands over time. So a small negative karma or for positive action will have over time increase, become more positive or more negative. This is just a thing that happens. So the third one, no cause, no effect. So if we never create cause, we never have to experience the effect. So that applies to both positive actions and negative actions. If we haven't created the cause to go to prison, then we won't go to prison. It won't happen. If you haven't created the cause to have a particular disease, you won't have it. So the last one is karma won't waste. It won't disappear over time. It won't disintegrate. And unless we purify the effects of karma, which we can do, which we'll have a look at next week and the week after, then karma will actually take effect. It doesn't just go away. So they're the 4 general characteristics of karma. And of course, in the readings, you can Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa very skillfully explain how that works. So, so this week we're going to just look at a bit more of the details of karmic actions, and particularly what they call the 10 non-virtuous actions and 10 virtuous actions. I was just thinking, this is a bit like the 10 Commandments in the Christian tradition. Basically, a simple list of do's and don'ts. if you want positive results, don't do this. If you do these negative actions, then these negative results will happen. So, as His Holiness says in the beginning, in his discussion of karma, in that the book, The Foundation of Buddhist Practice, it's on your reading list. He says this is very much the level of initial level practitioners. Now remember that there are these different levels of Buddhist practice, and we need to actually accept that we're at the initial level of practice at a certain time. So the initial level practitioner is thinking about avoiding difficulties in the future, including avoiding a negative rebirth in the future. So we want to avoid being born in the lower realms where there's great suffering. So this does require some faith in future lives. To avoid suffering in the future, we avoid suffering causes, the causes of suffering. Just as if we want to be healthy, we avoid bad food and take exercise and so on. So this if we manage to diminish the amount of negative causes and increase the amount of positive causes, then we aim to have a positive rebirth, a human rebirth, as His Holiness says, is what's ideal, so that we continue on in the next life to study the Dharma, develop our practice, and proceed on the path to full enlightenment, path which is actually possible to actually end all suffering and become fully enlightened being and liberated from any possible suffering. So that's why we want to avoid negative results and negative causes. So so to understand what causes harmful effects, we have this list of 10 non-virtues. So it's important to know that this is not an exhaustive list. It's like a very simple list, very much concerned with our physical body, our physical speech, and also basic mental attitudes. So there's 10, the basic in these Buddhist teachings, the emphasis is usually on the 10 non-virtues, but there are actually 10 virtues as well, which is the opposite of the 10 non-virtues. So, example, one of the first non-virtue is killing, very unskillful negative action, and the virtuous counterpart is avoiding killing and saving lives. So, there are definitely as many virtues as there are non-virtues, but in all the teachings, the emphasis is always on the non-virtues. That, we're told, is because basically we have a lot of negative karma that we've accumulated over many lifetimes, and basically we need to work on the non-virtues and definitely avoid aggravating our already deluded mind. What Lama Nishi says, hallucinated and deluded mind. So there is definitely work to be done. So I thought what we'd do is just fairly quickly look through what those 10 non-virtues are, and then we look at go into them a bit more deeper, and see how we actually what they call have a complete negative action. Okay, so to actually have a perfect, shouldn't be use the word perfect, but to completely commit the action of killing, there are quite technical rules about how this is done, which actually reminds me very much of the rules of criminal law. I used to work as a lawyer, and it's actually these rules of karma, I think, are even more complicated than the rules of criminal law, which similarly have rules about what you have a definition of an offence, like say you have, it's unlawful to kill anybody, which is murder, intention to kill anyone intentionally, and then you have the elements of that, what you have to prove to show that somebody did kill somebody. So that you've got the physical element, the action, and what they call the mental element, the intention. You have to prove both to prove murder. And there's quite a lot of detail about definition of the physical action, definition of the intention, what sort of mental intention a person has to have, and so on. So this is, reminds me very much of these rules, but I think the Buddhist list is even more exhaustive and probably more perfect in some ways. So let's have a quick look. So the 10 non-virtuous actions. Now you've got the notes for tonight, which I sent you, and there's also a extra bundle of handout called the 10 non-virtues. So this is quite a useful document, which has been compiled by Sangha Kadro. Sangha Kadro is Kathleen MacDonald, I think, it's who wrote How to Meditate, the book How to Meditate. So so it's quite a more detailed list of the 10 non-virtues, and it also covers what they call the 3 bases, which we'll get to in a minute, and also the results of the 10 non-virtues. So just having a quick look, we won't sort of have time to go into detail of every one of the 10, but we'll just look briefly at the actual meaning of each one. So the first one, killing, we're not going to go through, we're just going to look at what's involved. So killing, it's involving a sentient being, and there has to be, when we come back and go through in more detail, we'll notice that there has to be some intention as well. Killing, these are 10 non-virtues of body, and they are killing, stealing, sexual misconduct are the 3 of body. So stealing, taking what's not freely given. Sexual misconduct, you can see that there's different definitions, and some Lamrim texts, which I think I prefer, the ones that I've actually heard all my teachers teach, is that it's about misconduct with the wrong partner. Like say a partner who's already married. That seems to be the modern sort of approach to sexual misconduct. Not necessarily the modern, but certainly that's the definition that I've heard being taught since I've been studying Buddhism. So those 3, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, non-virtues of body, you can tell that actually this is not a complete list. They don't cover things like intending to wound somebody, not kill somebody. So I was wondering why they haven't included that, but it's meant to be a simple list. Next one, non-virtues of speech, lying. So lying is denying what you hear is true when you know it's true, or falsely claiming something to be true that you know is false. Slander, basically causing disunity, a bit like our definition of defamation in our modern Western law, bring someone's reputation into disrepute in the eyes of the community. So it's a divisive action, divisive speech. Harsh speech is intending to hurt somebody's feelings, and idle gossip trivial talk. Trivial talk that, interestingly, it's defined as something that you think's important, like talking about something or somebody you're attached to, yapping on about how you want to buy the most perfect car or the new set of clothes or whatever. So, so they're the three non-virtues of speech. And of mind, there are four of speech. 3 of mind, covetousness, so this involves envy, jealousy. I've mentioned that it's like an extreme form of attachment. So wanting another's possessions, property. It's said in, I think, one of the extracts in the readings said it actually includes wanting something from a shop, seeing something in the shop and wanting it. It doesn't have to necessarily be somebody you know. So that's sort of wishing to have something, to possess something. Harmful intent is wishing harm to others, malice, which is like an extreme form of aversion or hatred, wanting harm to come to somebody. And then the last one, wrong views. It's like a form of any sort of form of ignorance. So, for instance, not believing in cause and effect, and then also part of it is trying to tell others that cause and effect's wrong. All the Buddhist teachings are all wrong, all nonsense. So ignorantly spreading, trying to make people disbelieve or believe something that's completely false. Denying, saying all the teachings on wisdom and karma are complete rubbish, that sort of thing. So wrong views. So these things all, to some extent, we could probably identify in our own lives as having done at some stage. Probably not, maybe certainly not murder, but killing, of course, covers any living being, not just a human. So, so His Holiness says, so knowing, when we go through and see actually what is involved in each one of these, we can see that these, by avoiding these, basically we're avoiding fairly simple list of things. It's not the whole field, but because it's easier to avoid something that's physical, like not gossiping, avoiding stealing and so on, then we're making a start. But basically we have to actually grapple with the attitudes and the intentions, which is the driving force, what they call the 3 poisonous minds. Attachment, anger, and ignorance are the driving forces, that intentions that actually drive these negative actions, which cause negative karma, negative result. So we do have to actually get to the mental attitudes as well. But as he says, that's a much longer term process, changing one's mind, much longer. So in the meantime, focus, at least stop adding fuel to the fire by being very mindful of our actions in body, speech and mind. And then also at the same time, taking on the longer term project of changing our attitude, becoming more compassionate, more patient, less anger, and then also studying the teachings on emptiness, wisdom realizing emptiness, which is that ignorance of not understanding that phenomena, that truth of emptiness. Wisdom realizing is basically the root cause, root delusion that's causing all our negative actions of body, speech and mind. So we'll look at these rules in a bit more detail, or the list. So according to the teachings, to completely to actually commit each one of these negative actions, we need 4 components, 4 requirements. So to have what they call a destructive karmic path. So let's look at killing. Okay, so the first one, there's 4 components. They are the basis, that's the object on which our action is focused. The intention, this is our attitude. The performance, that's the actual activity. And completion, finishing that activity. So let's look at each one of these. So really, to understand what this means, you need to look at the example of each. So we'll look at the example of killing. So for complete action of killing, and good to actually look at the handout on the 10 non-virtues on this. In my copy, it's labelled page 13 as the first page. That's because it's taken from another set of teachings. But anyway, on the first page, so killing a sentient being, which is an animal or anything that has consciousness. Sentient means living being, other than yourself. So just keep that in the back of your mind, other than yourself. The reason is because suicide is regarded not as technically as killing, but it's a very negative action, but not killing. So that's the basis, killing a sentient being. So it covers an insect, cockroach, even a mosquito that we find biting us. And there's some very moving stories in Lama Zopa's extracts in the readings about geshis or monks that he knows that took such great pains to avoid killing something like a lice, insect that's on the skin, and even taking these insects from other beings and putting them on their own body so that they relieve the suffering of the beings they're on, and that they'll be actually giving food to those beings. So not only are they not killing them, but they're actually they're being very kind and protecting them from being killed and giving them food, their own blood. So so the intention, there's 3 bits. So recognizing that that you are killing a sentient being, recognizing the object. So I don't think this should be taken too seriously. So I think, if you have somebody who's, say, shooting into a crowd of people and they actually don't know, the identity of each one, I don't think it means that. I mean, it means that you recognize that you're actually killing a sentient being. So the second one is it's motivated by ignorance, by delusion. So killing out of anger. So another example would be using animal sacrifice, which some religious traditions do, to thinking that some spiritual practice that will benefit overall. Said to be very negative action, using animal sacrifice. So there's killing out of anger or attachment. So then there's the motivation to do the action. So I intend to kill it, having that mental, not just doing it accidentally, but having the mental wish to end that being's life, but until intention to kill the being. Okay, so you can see there's the use of intention and motivation, the slight difference. Intention is the general attitude and motivation. There seems to be a specific wish to kill. that being. So then the third one is the performance, actually carrying out the killing either with a weapon or poison, or if it's a mosquito, just slapping it with our hand or whatever. So with the action, and then the completion. So having being pleased seems to be part of it. Being satisfied that you've actually done what you wanted to do, killed that being. And if it's a human being, it seems to be important that the person dies before you. So that means that if you kill yourself, it's not possible to satisfy that particular sort of karma. So the karma of suicide is definitely negative, but it's not regarded as killing a human being because it would lack that fourth element where the being dies before you. It's very technical. So just looking at this in some other, there's so many different examples we can think of. Renata has a couple of, in her transcript, she mentions well-intentioned actions that actually accidentally kill or injure the person that we're trying to help. In this case, so we think of a car accident. She gives the example of a car accident where a passerby comes to help the victim's lying on the road, badly injured, and the passerby moves the victim to try and relieve their suffering in some way. And unknowingly, the person has a broken spine, and by moving the person, you've actually aggravated the injury. You might either cause the person to die or cause them to be paralyzed for the rest of their life. So she mentions that. So what about that? So just think of that. So what's missing in that one, if you look through the list, is there's no intention. There's no intention to do the action. That's the motivation. It's not to kill. Motivation is to try and help. So that person who's completely well motivated but causes a very negative effect on the person they're trying to help will not experience a full, complete karma of killing that being or injuring that being either. So this type of well-meaning action where we try to help some in the situation but actually sometimes make it worse, Lama Yeshe used to call it idiot compassion or Inji compassion. Inji mean Westerners or English people who he used to make fun of if they hear the teachings, they go to a Copan course and then they tell Lama Yeshe they've got to go and start relieving the suffering in the world. So they want to go to Africa and start working with people starving and so on. So he's although this is very well motivated, of course, but can that person actually do anything? Would it be better if that person worked with their own internal mind, thoughts, rather than going out? And so it's not cut and dried. It's not always a bad idea to go and help relieve the suffering in the world. He's not saying that, but need to use our skill, our wisdom to decide what's the best thing to do here. With the example of the victim on the road, of course, if that person knew about the danger of moving injured people, which so a nurse or some of us might have some awareness of that, then they wouldn't have moved the person. A bit more wisdom, a bit more knowledge can help. So so then there's that we've only one of those non-virtues is killing. So you can see, looking through the list, which you can do in your own time, that the four bases the four elements that are needed to complete each negative karmic action needs to be satisfied to have a completely negative karmic result. So then another thing that's interesting is that there can be group karma. Another good example Renata puts in her transcript of her teachings is a group enterprise to steal something. I think there's an example in the news about a group, this is going back a few years, a group of young kids wanted to steal mangoes from the neighbour's property, which they neighbour's tree, and then when the owner tried to stop them, they killed him. So there's this group undertaking to do a negative action, and it wasn't quite clear who actually killed the owner, the man who was trying to stop them. So there could be there's karma, individual karma, and there's also the idea of group karma, where a group of people who are in a common enterprise, common negative enterprise, can experience negative effects of what they're doing. It's a negative outcome. So there's a lot of gang violence and so on. I think I mentioned last class that the country can have some group karma as well. Australia's treatment of refugees has always bothered me, and there's the governments that are promoting this bad treatment of refugees, offshore detention and so on for an indefinite period, are being voted in repeatedly by the people. Not all the people, but they win election. So some sort of karmic group karma must be involved in that. Sort of group karma, just as might be group karma when we took in a lot of refugees from after the Vietnam War. The opposite, complete opposite. Back in the 80s, when there were a lot of Vietnamese refugees, Australia was incredibly kind and gave asylum to all the boat people. Completely different, opposite attitude to what's going on now. So the idea of group karma there. So also just taking a few random comments about the list. With lying, I mean, you can imagine that sometimes lying will have might be positive. They give the example quite often in these sort of teachings where there's somebody who you can think of during the Nazi period in Germany, when some people were taking a great risk in giving asylum and protection to Jews who were trying to escape the Nazis, and they would lie to the Germans about not having any Jews in their house, and they would actually be giving as much protection, food, shelter, and so on to Jewish people fleeing the Nazis, and, the extermination of the Jews. So their motive in lying is to save the lives of beings, very positive. So it's not always you need to look below the physical action for all these actions. What's motivated? What's the intention? So the intention, if it could be completely positive, based on the example I gave, or the intention could diminish the negative effects of the karma, should lessen it. So it could be lessened or completely negated. Okay, so just looking through the list to see if I've got any other comments there. There's also an interesting example Renata gave of someone doing something positive in a very angry way. And the example of a beggar in the street who's annoying a passerby who walks past that person every day, finally, after refusing to give them anything, just throws some money at the person in a very angry way, even though the action is being charitable, the state of mind negative, out of anger, giving the money, so that the virtue that would normally be accumulated from that action could be lessened or negated by that person's anger, because the anger is very negative. Mind can burn up good karma very quickly. So I'm hoping to do, if we've got time, to do a meditation on anger. So it's being one of the three poisons, the poisonous minds that actually can motivate or give us the impetus to create negative actions, anger. So so there's many interesting different variations on how these four components can be varied. They can either be absent or not completely present, which can actually vary the result. Just looking at the time. Okay, so that brings us to the results. Now things get more interesting. So we're looking now. If you've got your notes there, looking at these, we're on page 3, the notes. So when it comes to causes and results, that's what karma is all about. The teachings say that there are actually 3 types of causes: a substantial cause, cooperative cause, and ripening cause. So these 3 types of causes, good way of His Holiness uses the example of the clay. The substantial cause is the clay that's used to make the pot. Okay, the substantial cause, the clay that's used to make. So another example would be the seed that causes the tree to grow, the substantial cause. The cooperative cause is the helps the result. So this is like the potter who uses his skill as a potter to mold the clay into a certain shape. Another example would be the water and the nutrients and the sun used to help the seed grow. So that's substantial cause, cooperative cause, and then what's called the ripening cause. The ripening cause is really reserved for what happens at the time of death. Okay, the state of mind of persons when they leave their body. So this state of mind at the time of death is said to be incredibly powerful. The person is actually losing their coarse body and using the coarse part of their mind, and their state of mind at that time is what they call throwing karma, ripening cause. And if their state of mind is positive at that time, even though they might have accumulated much negative karma during their life, then that karmic power, it's called throwing karma, will throw them into a good rebirth. If the state of their mind is negative, say overwhelmed with attachment, anger, even though they might have led a good life, then that force of that, what they call throwing karma, could throw them into a negative rebirth, into the lower realm. So the mind, state of mind, time of death is incredibly important and powerful. That's why we need to die in a peaceful environment. And if we're able to help a person through a dying experience, we need to make sure that the conditions are good, peaceful, and not causing these negative states of mind. So those 3 causes, and then three types of results. So this is, we're going to apply these. We've just actually looked at what negative, the 10 negative actions are, how those 10 negative actions ripen, what results they cause. So there's three types. Results similar to the cause. So this is said by Lama Zopa in all the teaching as well, that this is really the most powerful, the worst of them. So it means that if you have the habit of killing, or you develop the habit of killing in this life, for example, the result will be that you are killed in future lives, or else you'll have a very short life, or perhaps suffer very bad health. But there's also the other aspect of developing the habit of killing, so that general habit to repeat. So you actually have this result similar to the cause, this experiencing being killed, and also you also have the imprints of wanting to kill yourself, creating more negative karma, more killing. Okay, so this is quite shocking if we think about it. The environmental result is the place that we're actually find that we're reborn into. So this very specific. Reading some of this can be quite sobering. So, for example, if you have anger, this could result in rebirth in an ugly, unpleasant place. So we'll look at the individual examples when we go through the details. Ripening resolve is the type of rebirth. So if the person has accumulated great merit, they will be, during their lifetime, and they die with a positive state of mind, they'll hopefully be reborn as another human being, be able to continue contact with the Dharma, their practice, and progress along the path. So, example of the person, if a person is reborn as a human, so the substantial cause was their karmic imprints in their mind, the seeds of positive karma in their mind. The cooperative cause are the parents. Okay, so the parents, like the physical causes that enable that person, mental consciousness, to enter the womb of those parents and join with that the tissue cells of the parents. So that's the environmental result, or the cooperative cause, rather. The cooperative cause. So there are those three karmic results. So let's now have a look. And if you've got your notes there, we're on what I've got is page 17 of the handouts that I've got, that's called the 10 non-virtues, the results of the 10 non-virtues. So now in the handout, there's only, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. I think I am. The handout only has results of the 10 non-virtues, but not the 10 virtues. But if you manage to do the reading, look at the readings, Lama Zopa's readings in the handout, the readings, page 19, Lama Zopa looks at both the results of non-virtues and the results of the equivalent virtues. So, for example, the results of killing and the results of not killing, saving life. But in the list that you've got, it's just basically, we'll probably just, because the time's limited, we'll just have a look at the maybe the non-virtues. So just coming back to the example of a person who say kills, killed, we could say a human being, more serious karma, or has a habit of killing, and so the ripening aspect. So this is the throwing karma, is that they'll be reborn in the lower realms. Now, after that person, this is Lama Zopa explains this, after that person's karma to be in the lower realms expires, or it could take many great eons, many huge amounts of time for that to happen. If they're now reborn as a human, as a result of that negative action, that they'll be born with a human body, but they will have a shorter life. They'll have a tendency to want to kill. So that's the result similar to the cause. So this person will also be born in a dangerous place where life is threatened, and also has a tendency to create more negative karma of the same kind. So now, if it's the opposite, and also the environmental effect is that they'll tend to be born in a dangerous place. I think I mentioned that. So the state of mind, the karmic imprints will have a tendency to have a short life, and they'll environmentally be born within a place where there's maybe wars and great dangers. So looking at the virtuous action, the person who saved lives, you can think of a doctor who spends his whole life saving lives and trying to avert suffering from beings, or a vet who's trying to save animals and so on. So the results will be born in the higher realms and having a long life, good health, and be born in a safe place. So and have that tendency to want to save lives in the future. So this is the opposite to the negative action. Okay, so the stealing, just looking at the time. Okay, the stealing, again, the person has spent their life taking what's not theirs. There'll be a possibility of birth in the lower realms, but then if they reborn a human, they'll tend to have a lack of resources, results similar to the cause, and they will have a tendency to want to steal, that habit, and the environmental effect will be born in a drought place where there's a lack of water. There's many people who want to rob that person. Okay, and so on. Virtuous action, person who looks very carefully after other people's money is going to be born in a positive rebirth, in a place where there's great security, good harvest, enjoying plentiful possessions and lots of wealth. So be very careful not to steal other people's possessions. Okay, so it goes on. So these details I'll leave up to you to look at. There are always interesting, difficult cases where there's a mixture of motivations or a mixture of intentions. His Holiness talks about that. We might have next week have a look at some of those interesting variations on karma. So what my plan was to actually just see if there's anything else there we need to cover. Yeah. So rather than go to that, what I think would be really useful is to do the meditation on anger, or dealing with anger. Because as His Holiness said in teachings on this subject, the 10 virtues are the beginning by avoiding as much as possible committing the 10 non-virtues. But behind that are the mental, three poisons of anger, attachment, and ignorance. And they're the things that we need to tackle in the long term. So with this teaching, with this meditation, it's actually meditation on dealing with anger or aversion. His Holiness, in his wonderful book called let's try to read it, Healing Anger. There's a book just devoted to by His Holiness to the topic of anger. He says that often anger is said, they group hatred and anger into the same non-virtue, or one of the poisonous mind. But he says actually there's possibility that anger may not always be non-virtuous. And he talks about people, probably quite commonly in the West, there's this concept of anger at people being unjustly treated. So in this situation, he says that may not involve hatred, it may want to involve other people's, to relieve other people's suffering. So human rights groups or human rights activists getting angry when they hear about tortures and mistreatment of other people's human rights. So that type of, I think he's referring to that type of indignation and wanting to do something to relieve suffering. He says, so anger sometimes can basically lead to virtue, but hatred never can. He says if it's directed, hatred is always negative, whereas anger, it's possible that there is some positive motivation there, but hatred is always negative. So there's a kind of a formal definition of anger aversion, which is that the mind exaggerates the bad qualities of some external thing or person and wants to takes a dislike to it and wants to be separated from it. So that's sort of like a formal definition. So it can be expressed, maybe the feeling of anger could be expressed or could actually just be unexpressed. So he actually disagrees with some Western psychologists who say that expressing anger is beneficial, and he uses the teachings on karma that we've just looked at, saying that if the habit of expressing anger is encouraged, you have that person developing a propensity. By expressing the anger, he could harm other beings if he's using harmful words or physical violence against other beings. So this idea of making it more important to express anger than not express anger, he disagrees with. And of course, I think Western psychology now is moving in that direction as well. The idea of not expressing anger not being necessarily a good thing, particularly with physical implication. So, so it can also sometimes be tied up with attachment. We don't get to be with the person we're attached to, so we get angry. Maybe there'll be some sort of violence involved. We can't follow in touch. We can't get what we want. So the reaction could be one of anger. So the karmic, or sort of the quality of anger is said to be like a fire, incredibly quick, like an explosion, and also burns up negative karma really quickly. It has this very negative effect on our mind, and said that eons or many lifetimes of positive karma we've accumulated can be destroyed in a moment of anger. So, so of course it can be slow burning. It may be something that starts from annoyance and build up from there. So it doesn't necessarily have to always be explosive and very obvious. So how to deal with it? So in this meditation, the first thing is to contemplate the faults of anger. So we actually go through those. I've mentioned some of them already. The negative effects. There's also affects our mental calmness is disturbed. We can never be in a calm state of mind when we're angry. Our physical body can be affected. High blood pressure, it can actually cause physical disease, cardiovascular issue, digestion, sleeplessness, and also anyone who's really angry is quite ugly looking. Their good looks, if they've got them, can change very quickly. So, we can harm ourselves, we can harm others, we can regret, say something really harmful, hurtful to our loved ones, to our family, can be the cause of domestic violence. And so these various negative disadvantages are false. So then we bring to mind, then we actually look at how to, using patience is the antidote to anger. So we think of the benefits of the antidote, the patient mind is a happy mind. If anyone has ever had the fortune to be close to someone who's a very patient person, you can see that they attract positive feelings, positive environment, positive atmosphere around them, many friends usually. And the patient mind also has room for compassion, room for understanding, understands the benefits of compassion. So the other main antidote to the angry mind is investigating the I that is angry. Who is it that is angry? Looking carefully. So this is may not have time to do this one tonight. This is the kind of the key to tackling anger, looking at how there is no substantial me who there when we apply teachings on emptiness. There's no when it seems to be something very physical, that I am upset, I have been offended, but when you look, you can't actually find this I that you're trying to protect or get revenge for. And it's the same when you look at the person. Usually it is a person who's making you angry. You can't actually find the enemy there. Final way of dealing with anger is to think of the difficult person, and usually it's another person that makes us angry, as giving us the incredible opportunity to practice patience. If everybody's being nice to us, we're surrounded by people who are always on our side and praising us, agreeing with us, then there's no opportunity to practice patience. This is something that is indisputable. When you think about it, it's so true that the person that presses our buttons, makes us feel uncomfortable, is the person who is giving us the opportunity to practice. So Lama Zopa says these are the most like a precious jewel, more precious than our loved ones. So that's the practice. So we'll abbreviate it to fit it in for the next 10 minutes or so. So get comfortable and we'll do our brief meditation on dealing with anger. So we start our meditation on dealing with anger by bringing to mind a situation where we have felt anger towards a specific person. This could be someone we work with, could be a relative, could be someone who has harmed us, said something to upset us, done something to upset us. Somebody maybe who has views that we disagree with strongly and that causes us to feel angry towards them. Maybe someone who inexplicably makes us feel uncomfortable for no particular reason. Some sort of karmic thing there that has happened in the past, maybe past lives, that just being in the presence of that person makes us feel uncomfortable. We look a little bit more closely at why we feel anger or some sort of uncomfortableness in this person's presence. It's also possible that they reflect a negative aspect of our own personality, like a mirror that we don't like. It could be that we actually exaggerate that person's fault because we're not happy with our own life. Perhaps we're dissatisfied with ourselves, kind of a low estimate of our worth, and that person tips us over the edge. Whatever the reason, whether it's because we've harmed them or whatever, we think of the disadvantages of feeling angry to that person. First one destroys our state of mind, our equilibrium, our peace of mind. Think about our state of mind when we're feeling angry, upset. Can't actually have a peaceful state of mind. It takes away our enjoyment of a situation. Instantly it can, like a chill breeze, come into the room and destroy the happiness, the good atmosphere there, very suddenly. So it can disturb our peace of mind. It can also, if we have the habit of being angry, disturb our health. Adversely affect our physical health. Blood pressure, heart, sleeplessness. Could also affect our career, our job. An angry person is not attractive. Someone people want to avoid. Apart from that, there's the harm we do to others. Think of the sharp words said in anger to our loved ones. Perhaps even physical violence. Then there's the karmic aspect, burns up our positive karma, all our merit that we've accumulated, be destroyed in a moment of anger, like a wildfire. It also has the effect of, similar to the cause, that we have a tendency to create the pattern of anger in the future. It's a great obstacle to developing loving kindness and compassion. An angry mind has no room for loving kindness or compassion. So all these disadvantages, the faults of anger. So now I'm meditating on the the virtues of patience, the opposite of anger, forbearance, patiently enduring difficult situations, patiently enduring criticism, harm from others, not retaliating. A person who is patient has a happy mind, a warm, compassionate, loving mind. Usually has many friends and people want to be near that person. And then we can think of how, without that difficult person, the person we might see as an enemy, how we cannot practice patience, we cannot practice important, essential part of development in the path to enlightenment. This person is giving us the opportunity to practice patience, without which we can't progress on the path. Without patience, we just can't practice compassion or loving kindness. This person has given us the opportunity to develop our mental qualities. This person is more precious than our friends, those who support us, like a precious jewel. By repeatedly meditating on this person as a friend, a kind person, that we can change our attitude to that person, and change our pattern of hatred and anger. So finally, we can just conclude that the faults of anger are great, destructive of self, and harmful to others. The advantages of patience far outweigh the advantages of patience. By contemplating that, develop a patient attitude towards those who we see as harming us, change our attitude towards them. So we can dedicate any positive merit from this practice towards our development of patience, loving kindness, compassion. May we become less angry, more patient. And maybe dedicate, maybe from this practice and all future practices, past practices, develop peace in them, in our own minds and the minds of other beings, peace in the world. Just reading now Lama Zopa's special dedication for the time of the coronavirus. However many sick sentient beings there are, may they quickly be freed from all sickness. May all sickness without exception of transmigrating beings never occur again. And then another thought from the Buddha, quote from one of the sutras. The thought manifests as the word manifests as the deed develops into habit, The habit hardens into character. So watch the thought and its ways with care, and let it spring from love, born out of concern for all beings. Okay, so thank you so much. Have a wonderful night, a good week, and we'll see you back next week at the same time. All the best. Stay well. See you next time.